What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how Chelsea managed their way into the Champions League final. This is going to be looking at a Chelsea game model analysis and primarily their build-up phase in possession of the ball and their defensive phase going against the ball. So before we start, be sure to check out my book. It's on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And be sure to check out Keyframe, which is how I made this video. But let's get right into it. So one thing Chelsea always do under Thomas Tuchel is build with three central defenders, Christensen, Silva, and Rudiger on the left. And Rudiger, one concept they used when building from the back is not always would they occupy each of the central corridors, but they would play it with an asymmetry between these three players, which would overextend Real Madrid's man orientation. So as we see here, we have Benzema looking to split the two central defenders using his cover shadow to block Rudiger, but this becomes much harder when this distance is increased. So with the increase in distance, Rudiger has more space to then progress the ball, and he can be accessed via his movement or a third man option. The next was the single pivot that led to this progression as well. By having the pivot in the same vertical line, this emphasizes the space that Rudiger has because of Real Madrid's man orientation in the midfield, because we have Modric and Toni Kroos now occupying the same vertical line, which decreases their spatial control because of inefficient positioning. Now we can see moving forward up the field when Rudiger goes into the wide position, the wide area, and he's covered then by his other two central defenders, playing again a little bit more asymmetry, Rudiger entering the interior part of the wide area, but this time we have a more flat double pivot to then give them more control as Rudiger jumps to progress the ball. The double pivot secures them in transition and prevents Real Madrid from having dangerous counterattacks. Then we have our three players occupying advanced places between the lines, and then our width obviously created by our wingbacks. And then Real Madrid, we start to see their shape here, and their 5-3-2, and Modric is then forced to jump to then address the ball and try and prevent progression from Rudiger. So now moving forward, we start to see that Chelsea used their double pivot a little bit differently, going higher up the field to then secure transition and create a more efficient counter pressing system. And with their three central defenders, their wide center backs had more freedom to then jump in the half space, thus taking advantage of Benzema's blind spot and being able to attract midfielders to then exploit the space between the lines. As we see here, the ball's in circulation, but we can see the concept happening. Modric's a midfielder being pulled out of the midfield, and then now we're left with the space between the lines for the Chelsea players. As we see here, Timo Werner and Mason Mount playing through the left half space in this instant, then have more space because of the jumping of Luka Modric. And the same would be true if Christensen would get the ball, or they can attract pressure into one half space and then progress via the other. Out of possession, Chelsea went with a 5-2-3, which sometimes turned into a 5-3-2 with Mason Mount's versatility as the left-sided midfielder. He sometimes joined Conte and Jorginho, but that was more so earlier in the game. As the game went on, they played with the 5-2-3, which was very effective in covering the half spaces and using spatial control around the dangerous advanced area positions in the central corridor. This 5-2-3 the 5-2-3 creates a general staggering between the midfield and forward lines, creating balance within the team when they go to press because of the cover the double pivot offers the front three, and the front three's cover shadows block the positions that the double pivot can't access. So now, going deeper, we see that Chelsea, at times, especially earlier in the game, used a 5-3-2, but in the second half, they switched more to a 5-4-1. And as we see here, we have our five defenders, which is a staple for Thomas Tuchel's team, our double pivot, and then Mason Mount coming alongside of them at times to then control some of the movement from the Real Madrid players with the two forwards. But Mason Mount, most of the time in the second half, played a little bit higher up the field, and joined the other attacking players in the first line, creating a 5-2-3, and then deeper it would be more of a 5-4-1. So now we can see this 5-4-1 in the second half with the advanced wide players, or a 5-2-3, creating a pentagon shape around the central corridors, which gives them advanced players in each central corridor using their cover shadow to block entry passes from deep areas, and then the double pivot securing the positions of the blind spot of these three forward players. And now just a general Real Madrid concept that they had to use this to then counter was the dropping between central defenders of Toni Kroos. So when Toni Kroos would drop between Nacho and the most central defender, this would then release Nacho, as we see here, he's just off the screen, and when Nacho would be released, Toni Kroos would then become the deep line playmaker, which allowed him to use his range of passing to become dangerous and almost create something out of nothing. So that's the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.